everyone for coming. It's awesome to see some new faces and some of the regulars. This is a little different format if you can't tell. I have to say I was so cold last night that I was emailing them saying, can we have a real fire here? Which I guess that wasn't possible. It's worth a shot. But thanks so much, Cindy, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we were upstairs. If you didn't hear us, we were upstairs chit-chatting about Seattle. She's from Seattle, and I spent a lot of time there as well. And we got that all out of our system. We can still talk more about it, but I think you probably want to know a little bit more about Cindy and her background. So I jotted down some questions yesterday, and then let me know so we leave some time so that folks here can also ask Cindy questions, all right? Okay. So this is a very specific question. So tell me about yourself, starting with where you were born.
Where I was born. All right. I was born in Northgate. If anyone's been to Seattle, that's very close.
Wait, which
in
hospital?
Seattle. Northwest Hospital.
Oh, you know, 2 of my kids were born in Northwest Hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I was born January 1st, 1989 at 12:47 a.m. on New Year's Day.
Excellent.
I grew up in like a suburb near Seattle, and then I went to school at University of Washington.
That's good. Okay, that's good background. I thought that you would fill the whole rest of the time, with your biography there, but that's okay. We have other stuff to talk about. So, why did you become an entrepreneur?
Why I became an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
I became an entrepreneur on accident. When I was in my junior year of high school, my co-founder and I my co-founder is also my boyfriend, and so he was my boyfriend at the time and not my co-founder. We would always look for free pizza around campus because we're always looking for free food, and we saw this flyer that was like free pizza and some other stuff, and so we went to this meeting, and this professor there was like, this meeting is about synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is like this new thing where you can program biology the same way you program computers. And as we were eating pizza, we were like, oh, that's pretty cool. We like computers. I guess we can like biology too. And that led us into joining this lab at the University of Washington and participating in this undergraduate synthetic biology competition where we designed an anthrax therapeutic for the US Army. And we essentially took like the DNA sequence of some protein, and we put it in a computer, and we modeled it, and we changed out different parts of it to see if we could make the model better. And we made 87 different mutants and took the DNA code, and then you can order DNA from the internet now, and take that DNA and clone it into a biological part, so like E. coli bacteria. And you use the E. coli as a factory to generate your drug of choice. And our drug, we called it CAPD. And we made these 87 different mutants. 2 of them were effective against anthrax. And so then we published a paper in the Journal of Biological Chemistry where my little brother, who was 18 at the time, was the first author. And so that experience led us into this entrepreneurial experience where after that experience, I found that the drug we created could also be used for staph infections, which is very common in hospitals. And I went to my professor and I said, hey, where can I get like $5,000 to buy some antibodies and like reserve some time on the equipment? And he was like, I don't know, you're like 20 years old and you don't have a PhD and the amount of money you're asking for is too small. There aren't really grants for people like you. And so that's where we got the idea of, well, what if I just put my project on the internet and asked people to give small amounts of money to me, because I just need $5,000. And then if my results were positive or negative, I would share the story back out to the community that supported us. And that's when we came up with the idea for Experiment.
So did you actually do that process for your drug, though? Did you actually put it on the web and try to crowdfund funding, or you went right to the business idea that came out of it?
So I did not put the project on the platform, and the reason why I did not is because shortly after I asked my professor for the $5,000, he said, well, Cindy, I have like $1 million grant and here's the budget number. Just don't tell anybody that you're using this budget number. So I didn't need funding for that project.
I see.
But that made us question, like, is this a problem that I have and just me? Or is this a problem that lots of other people have? And is it just 20-year-old kids, or is it tenured faculty and grad students and even industry? And so I would like walk around the university and knock on professors' doors, and I'd be like, hey, do you have 2 minutes? I'm an undergrad doing this project. And I would ask them a few questions. I would ask them, like, is there a project that you've wanted to do for a long time, but you can't do it for some reason? And the answer is always yes. And then it'd be like, why can't you do it? And the answer was often, oh, because no like funding agency would fund this project. And so after talking to 100 or more scientists, we were like, oh, it seems like everybody has this challenge. So let's like put whoever's willing onto this website. So we taught ourselves how to code and like made a really basic website where you could put up your project and anyone on the internet could put in their credit card and fund it. And if it met the goal, then we would charge everyone and distribute the money.
So when you went around, it's interesting, you went around and asked, did you really actually talk to 100?
I did.
So it was 100 professors, research professors, something like that? So when you were doing that, had someone given you the advice that you needed to go out and talk to a lot of people? I mean, had you read the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries, or like, what was it that made you want to go and ask all those people?
So
That's a kind of a startup methodology that we use now.
Yeah.
So did you know about that when you were doing it?
Right when we started when we were like, let's build this platform, we participated in this, I don't know if people call it a hackathon, but it's like a weekend event called Startup Weekend. Do you guys have Startup Weekend here in Hawaii?
We have,
Is that a
yeah,
thing?
we have had it here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we went to Startup Weekend, and we went to Startup Weekend also because there was food, but like everything about my life is around food. And so we go to that event, and that's where I met a bunch of founders from the Seattle area. And I was like, oh, there are other people that like have done this and been somewhat successful. So there are a few startups at the time that had raised like a seed or A. And those were the, I guess, people that eventually became friends that gave me that advice. Talk to users.
Right, talk to. It's funny, we run a program here, a couple of programs here, where we force the Lean Startup methodology on people. And anybody familiar with Lean Startup methodology here? Yeah, okay, some of you are. I mean, basically what we're saying is, go find out. It's actually that came from the Toyota manufacturing motto, and I'll butcher this in Japanese, but I think it's Genshiken Betsu, which means go and see. So if somebody asks you a question, the answer is go and see, go and find out. So that's what she did. She went out and talked to 100 people. It's amazing that it's 100, because that's always my number.
Yeah.
So when teams say how many people should we talk to, I say at least 100, and usually their face falls because they think that seems really hard. And particularly talking to professors, I think if I walked around trying to find 100 professors here, I mean, no one would answer the door. Maybe some of them would, but so that's great. That's amazing that you did that. And how many of those folks do you think, like what percentage roughly of those folks did you feel that they validated the problem that you saw out there?
I'd say 100% of them validated the problem, but very few of them believed in the solution.
Interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about how the solution works? Yeah.
So what we have, if you go to experiment.com, it's anyone with a research idea can propose a project, and you have to have a clear hypothesis. So like this hypothesis that you plan to test using the scientific method, and you share what is your research question, what is the background, why it's important, and what you're actually going to do, how much money you need, and then you submit it to the site. And we have either someone on our team will review the project for clarity, scientific accuracy, and feasibility. And then if you pass that, so it's a sound scientific research project, then you have the opportunity to go onto the website and collect money from anyone that wants to give you money.
Well, and is it only in the biological sciences area, or could it be any type of research?
Any type of research.
Okay, so that makes me think that you must be really smart, obviously, but your team must also be really smart, because you're evaluating a wide range of very technical proposals that are in fields that you perhaps know nothing about, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe talk about your team a little bit. How did you do that?
So we're a little bit different from funding agencies in that funding agencies are deciding whether or not they should deploy the money, where we just decide, is this a sound research project? So really, anyone in this room could probably review for us. I would just need to train you, because what we're looking for is the content clear? So when someone else is reading this project, do they understand what your hypothesis is and like what you're trying to do? The second is any scientific claim that you have in this proposal needs to be supported by a peer-reviewed paper. So as long as that is there, then you're good. And then the third is it enough money to do what you say you want to do? And that part is a little bit hard to verify sometimes in different fields. But overall, those are like the things that you need to know. So do you have to be particularly knowledgeable or smart? You have to meet some bar, but I think anyone could do it. And I think that was like what I learned when my brother published that peer-reviewed paper as first author, is like, he was just like at our house and being like, Cindy, I don't have anything to do this summer. I was like, go to the lab. And then a year later, he's like publishing in the same quality journal as professors. And I was like, maybe you don't need so much knowledge to do high quality work.
So that's fascinating. I still want to know more about the team. So tell me about your co-founder, Denny, and then you also have a team in New York. And how did you find those people? And, tell us that story.
Okay. I guess I can tell you about our team right after we raised our first round of funding. So me and my co-founder, Denny, we met when we did that research project. And then we participated in a program called Y Combinator in the Bay Area, which is this program that is known for funding like Airbnb, Stripe, and Dropbox, and those companies. And shortly after that, that's when we started to build out our core team, because we had raised $1.2 million. And so the first person we hired was my friend named Skander. And Skander was a founder that was also from Seattle. And his startup wasn't growing as fast as he would have liked. And so he was like, I guess I can join you guys. So he joined as like our technical co-founder. And then after Skander joined us in living in this 1-bedroom loft in San Francisco. So it was like 3 of us. And then Denny's best friend from college was doing his PhD program at University of Utah and was unhappy about his PhD program. So we poached him to join our community team to onboard all our scientists. So we got Oscar. And Oscar also lived in this 1-bedroom apartment upstairs. And we went to IKEA and bought him a mattress. And then we hired someone who didn't live in the apartment. Then we hired 3 more people that did live in the apartment. So we had 6 or 7 people living in this 1-bedroom apartment where we used the apartment as the office as well. So everyone would roll out of bed and come downstairs when we do stand-up at like 9:30 a.m.
9:30, that doesn't seem too bad.
Not too bad, no.
So, and then when did you quit work?
Never.
When you fell asleep? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Yeah. And so that's right after Y Combinator. Does everybody know? Well, have you heard of Y Combinator?
Most I can give a short background.
Yeah, why don't you give them a short background? That's probably pretty interesting.
So Y Combinator is a program in the Bay Area, and twice a year startups can apply for the program, and the application is really short. It's probably equivalent to like 2 pages. And if they like your application, then they will invite you to come interview. And the interview is only 10 minutes. So they'll fly you to California, you show up, there'll be 4 partners on the other side of the table, and they'll ask you questions for 10 minutes and decide in 10 minutes if they want to fund you. And then if they do want to fund you, they call you at 5 p.m. that night, and they're like, hey, we would like to invest in you, and then you show up for us, we showed up the next day for the orientation. And then for about 3 months, 10 weeks or 3 months, you don't really change anything about what you're doing, but you have the support of the partners and you have the support of your peers who are the other companies in your batch. And so you continue to talk to users, build product, and maybe exercise. And every Tuesday night, they bring in a speaker. It's usually a founder who is running a pretty big company or has sold a pretty big company, and they'll tell you all their secrets. And so everything in that room every Tuesday stays in that room. And then you can ask questions. And at the end of the program, there's a demo day that is like the last, I guess right after the program ends. There's an alumni demo day the night before. So that's when all the alumni of the program come and like watch us practice. And then the following day, there's a room full of investors, and in our batch, there were 48 companies. Now they fund something like 200 companies a batch. We had 48 companies to like 400 investors in the room, which is great for a founder because that ratio is really awesome. And you have 2 minutes to say whatever you want to say. And then Y Combinator kind of follows you for life. And so now I'm part of this founder network. So it's this online forum that is kind of silly. It's called Bookface. And anytime that I need access to another founder they've funded, to advice on hiring or firing or marketing or technical stuff, I can go there and post. And within a day, someone who's thought about that problem for probably 10,000 hours will respond right away.
That sounds super helpful. That sounds like a great resource. So what was the most valuable thing you learned when you went through Y Combinator?
I think
something that you didn't know when you started.
I think the most valuable thing I learned was that everyone else, that on the outside it looks like everyone knows what they're doing. But when you know the people on the inside, no one knows what they're doing. And I think that made me feel a lot more, it made me feel better about how unprepared I felt.
So nobody knows what they're doing at Y Combinator?
I don't think anyone knows what they're doing in anything.
I totally agree. Yeah, that's comforting. That's comforting. Yeah, for sure. So let's, we jumped to Y Combinator, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of, while you were at University of Washington, about the kind of support you got from the, we talked a little bit about that upstairs, from the various programs that, kind of led you into the entrepreneurship journey. So what did you do while you were at UW, other than bugging professors, which must have taken up a lot of your time? But what were the other resources that you tapped into that helped you get this thing off the ground?
So the quarter that I bugged professors, I also got like a 0.7 on a 4.0 GPA score in my physics class. So that probably contributed.
Some trade-offs, yeah.
What was supportive for us? I participated in this program called the Howard Hughes Medical Institute undergraduate research program, which is probably similar to like the undergraduate research program here, where they'll fund you or like give you a grant to do research. And so that's how I got into the other lab that I worked in. And that was really helpful in teaching me how to bug professors, because the first task of that program was, Cindy, go bug like 20 professors and find one of them that will let you sit in their lab every day and work for them. So that Howard Hughes Medical Institute program was really supportive. Then Startup Weekend was the first time that I realized that things like Facebook and Neopets and like these online businesses that I was using were built by people that kind of look like me. So that network ended up being really supportive, and some of the people that I met through Startup Weekend ended up investing in Experiment. And through that, I then met Connie, who we both know, at the University of Washington Entrepreneurship. It's called the Entrepreneurship Center.
It's called the Burke Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Yeah, so, and the Connie she's talking about, she's retired now, but for those of you who know Susan Yamada, Connie is Susan for University of Washington. She was, yeah.
And so Connie was really supportive of us and always made herself available. And we participated in the Foster Jones Accelerator.
Yeah, the Jones Foster Accelerator,
And
yeah.
through that, we got a $20,000 grant, I think. And then who else? The iGEM program was really helpful because that was, so for the iGEM program, every year 150 undergraduate teams go to MIT. And so when you go to MIT, you need to present and someone need to volunteer to present. And so I'm really scared of presenting. I'm still really scared of presenting. Like, this is really nerve-wracking for me. But I rose my hand and like presented. And that was the first time that I presented to like a large audience, something that was very scientific. And that was an experience that I think is pretty memorable for me.
Okay. So I'm encouraged by the fact that a lot of the support you sound like you got at University of Washington. We have programs here to help all of you. So we're all in good shape, I think. So now let's go back to Y Combinator. So that's a great insight that everybody's in the same boat and nobody knows what they're doing. It's not the way it seems with Y Combinator because we see. I guess we hear about the outliers, the wildly successful ones like Reddit and Airbnb and so forth, and so there must have been some bad things about Y Combinator. There must have been, like, what was the worst thing that happened that happened to Y Combinator?
It's gonna sound like a champagne problem. I had an incredible experience with Y Combinator. There's nothing bad I can say about Y Combinator, but during our batch, the batch before us was the first batch that they had funded like 86 companies. So they went from like 30 to 86. And PG is Paul Graham is the founder of one of the founders of Y Combinator. He calls it the batch that broke Y Combinator, because after that batch, about half of the companies like just disintegrated. Like the co-founders broke up or something happened. So our batch ended up being 48 companies, so a lot less, but the investor community for Y Combinator was still really big. And so at our demo day, the big, like, I guess, voice in the loudspeaker to all the founders was, I know you can raise money at a very high valuation, but do not do this. Do not do this. And like a lot of people didn't like take that advice. And what happens is if you raise money at a very high valuation, if you go for your next round and you can't raise higher than that, you're going to do a down round. And so that was one bad thing about Y Combinator.
So the bad thing was that, not that I agree with the advice, but the bad thing was that people tried to raise at a very high valuation.
And they successfully raised at high valuations. And I would
But
say
were you given that advice before you went and pitched investors?
No, because that never happens.
Oh, okay. Huh, that's interesting. So out of the 48 companies, how many companies are still in business today?
More than 50%.
And that was how many years ago?
That was 2013.
20. Okay. All right. That's pretty good. Pretty good average. Are there any unicorns out of that batch?
So we had, I don't know how relevant this is, but we had Zenefits in that batch.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Which like blew up, but still going.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Teespring in that batch, which was also huge, but now they're kind of like smaller. So at the time, it looked like these companies were going up and up and up. And then now that we're 7 years in, who's like the most successful one in the batch? It's a good question. Many of them got acquired. Yeah, so one got acquired by Slack, one got acquired by VMware, one got acquired by LogMeIn. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good batch. Yeah. So then now you're working on Jelly, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, but Experiment is still around.
Yeah.
And so, but you've Is that a pivot to a different business, or is that a different business altogether? And maybe tell us about that.
How are Jelly and Experiment related?
Yeah.
Experiment and Jelly are completely separate companies. They have the same founders, so Denny and I are founders of both. Experiment is a sustainable organization that spends and makes around $4,000 a month. We have 3 part-time staff that review the proposals and onboard the scientists, and I do a monthly call with the staff on the first Tuesday of every month. And everyone is remote, and I probably spend an hour a week on Experiment. Experiment's in its own world. Jelly is like where I'm spending all of my time and all of my hours right now, and also where my co-founder Denny is spending all of his time. He's at our apartment in Kaimuki right now trying to code the stuff so that we can launch on Tuesday. And the way that they're related is that they're both science tools. I would say Jelly is like a evolution of Experiment. So we took everything that we learned from talking to I think I've spoken to over 10,000 scientists, one-on-one on the phone or in person, and we're applying that to build Jelly, what is Jelly? I haven't described that at all. Jelly is, people like to call it a GitHub for science. So if you could think of every scientific paper were a GitHub repo, every science project were logged, so you have the protocols, you have the data, you have the failed results, successful results, all of that in one place so that you can collaborate with your colleagues. And when in 10 years, when someone's did somebody discover, I don't know, some species here in Hawaii, you can look back and say, oh yeah, Cindy in 2010 logged this here at this time. So we're building a workflow tool for scientists that I guess doubles as a social network.
Okay. So, thank you. So, this is going to seem like kind of out of left field, but what's the best advice that you ever got?
The best advice that I've ever gotten.
Right. Whether you listen to it or not.
The advice that I listen to is, I'll give you 2.
Okay.
One is the best advice that I listen to and the best advice that I don't listen to. So the best advice that I listen to is to always trust your gut. And I think I learned that very late in the process. So early on, when I was at University of Washington, when I would meet with, I don't know, the CEO of some company in Seattle, I would think, oh, they have so much more experience than me. They know all the things. Whatever they say must be true. And then I learned quickly, no, there's a lot of nuance in business. And oftentimes you know what's best for your business because you're in it every day. And so I would say, trust your gut. The advice that I don't listen to is don't listen to anyone's advice. Or I guess I do listen to it. But I think whenever you get advice, I would take it with a grain of salt. I think most people are pretty bad at giving advice. And so don't take any of my advice.
That's good advice. So, but no, I like what you're saying because I know in every one of our accelerator cohorts since 2014, some founder has come and said to us, to the team, that you're all giving me conflicting advice. Like when I meet one-on-one with you, you told me to do this, and then I meet with one-on-one with them, and they tell me to do something else. And my answer to that is always, yes, you're right. It's your job to figure out which advice is good. We don't know what to do, but you've asked us for advice, so we're going to tell you. We're going to give our opinion. So I think that's don't listen to my advice. That's right. Yeah. But I am going to listen to Crystal's advice because I want to have time for you to ask Cindy questions. So I've been asking questions for the last, half an hour or so. So when we interview people in the Lean Startup methodology, I always encourage people to ask, what else should I have asked? What did I miss? So what should we have asked Cindy that I haven't asked yet?
So is your experiment team physical or is it outsourced? So do they work from home or do they work in the office?
we're a remote team, so they work from home or wherever they want to work from. We have a handbook that's like a public handbook that anyone can read that gives them instructions on when you're working, you need to have a closed door. You need to not be doing your laundry, like things like that. You need to have a fast internet connection.
How do
Daniel?
you find a founder that's a co-founder that's not your boyfriend?
I would recommend going through your entire list of friends and choosing the ones that you're like, oh, I would enjoy building a project with them over the weekend, and then call them and be like, hey, let's build something together, and build something over the weekend or over 24 hours or over an evening, and then be like, oh, do I want to spend more time with them? If yes, then spend more time with them. If no, then don't.
That's a good way of thinking about it. A lot of people form founder relationships based on skill sets. So, you're more technical and this person is more of a marketing person, this person is a finance person, as opposed to saying, hey, these are people, do I want to spend a lot of time and hard times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Daniel?
Why are you in Hawaii?
Denny likes to surf. And because we raised some money, and I think this is the only time that we'll be able to live in Hawaii, because we don't have staff. We have one person in California. So we were like, why not? So we got on a plane last week of July, and then we ended up here. And then I think the following week or 2 weeks after, I met Anne. And I don't know, we don't know, but we like it here.
Well, we're super glad you're here. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
What are the challenges that you have to face when called funding for your startup?
So the question is
The challenges in
the challenges
get funding.
to get funding. Lots of challenges. So when we were in Seattle, I think I met with every single investor in Seattle in 2012. Every VC at least, maybe not every angel. And the advice that we kept getting was, you guys don't have an exit strategy slide in your deck. And I was like, what is that? Because I'm some non-business student, And they were like, you need to have a acquisition strategy. If you guys sell, who do you sell to? And I was like, oh, okay. I put this slide in this deck. And still no one in Seattle wanted to fund us because I think the criticisms were you guys don't have any business experience. We definitely didn't have any traction. We had 6 projects funded. And you guys seem too idealistic. And then so we went to Silicon Valley and met with one of the first funders of Facebook. And I was sitting down with this VC and showing her our deck. And I get to this slide that's exit strategy slide. And she was like, we don't fund founders that want to sell their companies. Why do you have this slide in your deck? And I was like, because and then I didn't really have anything to say. And ever since then, I've not used that slide. And I think what I learned is that when you are fundraising, especially for a high growth business, you need to be very confident, and this needs to be an honest confidence that comes from you that this business will change the entire industry. And if you believe that yourself and you can communicate that to anybody else, then it will be very easy for you to raise money.
That's good. You reminded me of this rule of thumb that a friend of mine has. So he's an entrepreneur and he's had a whole bunch of different businesses and he's pitched hundreds, probably thousands of investors before. And his rule of thumb is if you're pitching somebody and they're giving you advice about they give you advice about your deck, they're not going to invest. Mm-hmm. So if they tell you need this slide or you should change that slide. And so he doesn't spend any time following up with them anymore if that's the advice they get. And that's kind of similar.
And then what I ended up doing is I raised the first round without a deck because I would just focus on the story.
And the business, and the core business. That's good advice. Anne?
So Cindy, how did you get in front of all of these investors in Seattle and the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley? Were you persistent? Did you just cold call? Did you use connections? I mean, how did you get in front of all these investors?
In Seattle, it was a lot of, in every case, it was warm intros. So in Seattle, like Connie and a bunch of other founders in Seattle helped make those intros for me. In the Bay Area, like that entire intro stuff was all taken care of by Y Combinator. So because we were already on the stage and because this audience was already there, we could kind of, so during demo day, they have this app where the investors will rate you on like, do they like you or not like you? And then I can also see how many other companies they liked. So if they only liked me, I know they really like me. If they liked everyone, then I know they might not like me. And so we would use that as a gauge to figure out who to follow up with. And for our fundraising, Denny and I, we got this advice from another founder through Y Combinator, was we made a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet was 200 investors on that list. And there's a rating for how much they like us, a rating for how much I like them, a rating for how much Denny likes them, how big their check size is based on me back channeling through other founders they've invested in. And then we made an algorithm of like this plus this plus this divided by whatever gives you this number. And then you rank them, right? Like this is the person I really, really want. This is the person like I don't know them well enough, but like I know them through somebody else. So like I'll take a meeting with them. Like maybe we could be partners. And then my recommendation now for founders is split them into thirds. Go for whoever's in the I guess if it's 1, 2, and 3. 1 is like the people you really want. Go for 2 first. Meet with all of those people. Then meet with 1. Then meet with 3. Because in 2, you can test the waters without talking to the people that you really, really want. And then I always back channel through founders and not through investors. So if I really want to meet, let's say you're an investor and I really want to meet you, I won't take an intro to you through another investor unless that investor has already invested in me. But I know that you've invested in Daniel. And so I don't know Daniel, but I'll cold email Daniel. I'll be like, Daniel, hey, what was it like to work with Michael? Can I interview you about that experience? And founders usually will take that meeting.
That's excellent. That's very tricky.
If anyone
like
has
it.
questions about fundraising, it's like my favorite activity.
You know, most people get pretty jaded from fundraising, so you're still excited about it. That's awesome. So definitely go to Cindy for advice. So do we have time for one more question? Yeah. Anybody have no? Pardon? Okay, good. Yeah, sure, of course.
So your pitch to Y Combinator, the 10-minute one, I think I heard a story that you had an unexpected outcome from
Yeah.
that. Is that right?
Well, we thought we weren't going to get in.
Right.
So the way that Y Combinator works is for the interview, is you show up and the 4 partners can ask you whatever they want. So you don't prepare a pitch. You just like show up and it's like rapid fire. And so Denny and I, 2 nights before, we had been practicing because if you go online, there's like all the questions that Y Combinator usually asks. And then there's this tool where the question will be asked on the website and then you have to answer within 5 seconds, otherwise PG will like get mad at you or something like that. And so we had practiced where every single question, it either belonged to me or belonged to Denny, and it was a 1-sentence answer because we knew we only had 10 minutes. And so we had practiced all these questions, and if it were a question not on the list, it would go to me because I was the CEO. And we go into this meeting, and the first thing that I try to do is because we have a product, I try to like show Paul Graham the product. I'm like, Paul, will you can play with it. And he like closes my laptop, and he's like, Cindy, good founders can use words to describe what they're making or something like that. And I was like, oh no, now Paul Graham thinks I'm a bad founder. He's not going to fund us. And then they go into asking a bunch of questions. And towards the end, Denny and I definitely felt very like not confident because, I don't know, it just kind of felt uncomfortable. And we were like, we're probably not going to get in. And I don't know why we did this, but like a month before in Seattle, I had gone to, I got on Craigslist to like collect this collection of National Geographics from like really old National Geographics up until like 1990 or something like that. Because one of the things that we were trying to describe is like we're sharing the process of science through the internet. So it's like National Geographic for all science projects online. So I would give, like when I met, we were just talking about, we have a mutual friend, Jeff. When I met Jeff, I gave Jeff the National Geographic from his like birth month and year to like show that to him. And so at the end of the interview, we had prepared the National Geographics for every partner that was in that room. And we were like, this is what science looked like when you were born. And I remember we got Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston, Paul Graham, and Robert Morris, and Trevor Blackwell. Those are the 4 founders of Y Combinator. Were in the room at the time. And we got Jessica's birthday wrong because she's really private about her life. And we were like, I think we found like a Flickr photo of her blowing out candles in like January or something like that. And then she was like, how did you find my birthday? This isn't my like month. And then we're like, oh, it's okay. We came up with a backup because we knew she was January, February. So we're like, Jessica, this is the one for you. And maybe that made a difference in like them deciding to fund us because it was memorable. Who knows? Don't know.
That's so creative and unique, right? Yeah.
And then we went to, then we drank a lot because we were like, oh no, it's a bad outcome. And we had made this deal, me and Denny, because we were at Whole Foods the day before and we had no money. So we were like looking at the granola aisle, and the granola aisle is like always really expensive. It's like $15.99 a pound for granola. And so we made this deal where like, if we get into Y Combinator, we will go to Whole Foods and buy all the granola. And so when Paul Graham called us at 5 p.m. that night, he was like, hi, Denny, this is Paul, and we would like to accept you into the program. We're both really drunk, and then we went to Whole Foods and we bought a bunch of granola.
All right. Well, that's a great story, and it's been great talking to you. And you're going to have a chance to talk to Cindy. Hopefully you can stick around for a little bit and have some toast. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.